that concludes my presentation. So I'm happy to take questions. Yes.
So in your view, then, is this volunteer army always the optimal solution? And is there, if not, then is there any point in history in which conscription you think would be better? And then, if so, at what point did it tip, and why?
I guess it's axiomatic now in our day and age to say that democracy, is sort of a democratic republican form of government, is optimal. It's certainly not. It's not perfect, but if we can all agree that a republican form of government based on the U.S. Constitution is the best form of government that we could construct right now, then I would say under those circumstances, yes, a volunteer army is always optimal. I can't think of a situation where conscription would be preferable.
So then the implication is in World War I, World War II, etc., we would have done better if everything was truly volunteer army.
Yeah. I think better in the long run. I think probably, I mean, I don't know what the immediate result would have been like in individual battles, but I think over the long run it would have been better to have volunteers. I think in world, I mean, this is a tangent. I don't, if you ask me should we participate in World War I, I'd probably would have said no anyway to that. Given the fact that if I had to agree to the fact that we're going to send troops, I'd rather have any volunteers, and I think they would have done better. World War II, same thing. In all the wars, Civil War included, which deployed the most men, most of those were volunteers. And as a matter of fact, many of them, I don't know the percentage, but a great percentage of them came from actual volunteer militias that sort of sprung up, sort of organically in their communities. They weren't even, they weren't even sanctioned by the states. They were ready to go. They drilled together. It was sort of like a community organization. And when war broke out, they said, "Hey, we're ready to go. We already got our uniforms." So I think, I think under almost any circumstance, I could think a volunteer force would be preferable.
The definition of militia that we inherited at the time of the writing of the Constitution was all the able-bodied men from 16 to 60. And that they were to be prepared.
Yeah.
They didn't expect women to fight because they expected them to stay home and take care of the children and the old people. But if they were able to fight, they were expected to be able to defend their community. But they didn't foresee within it any part of going out and launching the war upon somebody else.
Exactly.
Do you believe that the current volunteer military of today is what is meant by a well-regulated militia?
No. I don't think, I certainly don't think that, there's not a whole lot of distinction today between the National Guard and the active duty federal army. They're virtually indistinguishable once they are deployed. They follow the same regulations, they wear the same uniforms, unit designations are the same, weapons are the same, they fall under the same rules, and a lot of them are transferable. They can transfer from unit to unit. Yeah. So I think that we've gotten away from what is meant by a well-regulated militia, and I think that's a little bit to our detriment. I would like to see governors have more control over the state National Guards and have them be more state militias. That's me. But I also think that, I read it was 2009, because I was deployed in Kosovo when I read that the National Guard was going to shrink, and they were going to try to funnel some of those would-be recruits into the active army and try to expand the standing army. I don't think that's the right course either. I'd rather see a bigger National Guard force that can be mobilized federally, but not be sort of a standing army living on military bases, isolated from the rest of the community. I'd rather see. It doesn't bother me, and I've only been on one deployment, and it wasn't a combat tour, but It doesn't bother me that national, they always say the National Guard is stretched too thin or relying too heavily on the National Guard. I think that's what the National Guard should be there for. I think it should be the bulk of our defense forces, and the standing federal army should just be a smaller force that can sort of prepare war plans and do the training and deploy into small engagements. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think it's close to what the Constitution framers had in mind. Not as close as I'd like to.
The most current example that illustrates a well-regulated militia would be what happened in Flight 93.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Two questions, somewhat unrelated, one observation. Regarding the well-regulated militia, I would suggest that your comment about the technology that is needed for the military now would argue against militia-type forces simply because they have to be trained, they have to be consistent, they have to be up to speed. I don't think you get that in the volunteer proposing. That's just my observation. But my question has to do with your expertise as a teacher. Okay. In terms of your observation regarding teaching methodologies in the Army, did you find them sophisticated, non-sophisticated? How would you rate?
In basic training, not sophisticated at all.
Okay. You do this, end of story.
What's that?
If you do this, end of story.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's interesting because one of the stories I relate in my book is when we got to, so that they send you for a week to prepare, they get all your shots, you get your uniforms, you sort of learn a few of the rules, and then they send you to a completely different unit to meet your drill sergeants who are really tough on you. And they just lay it on thick from the get-go and try to shock you a little bit. So when we moved over to that side, when we were actually in what we call basic training, we had maybe like the second day, we had a big, every meeting in the Army is a briefing. And there's nothing brief about it usually. We're in this huge auditorium, 200 soldiers, and we get a series of lectures about all this stuff that we're supposed to remember for the next 9 weeks, and it's just flying at us, and there's no way we could possibly remember it all. But our battalion commander got up, and he had a master's degree in psychology or something, I think. Great, finally, this is the guy I can relate to. He's going to say some good stuff, and he got up there and he said, hey, we realized that you guys are different than my generation, right? And I was much older than most of the guys there were 18, 19 years old. So, but he said, the Army's a little concerned that trainees aren't retaining the information as well as they should, and it costs lives on the battlefield if you don't remember what to do. If you didn't actually learn your job, and it's obviously that's a huge problem for the Army. So he recognized that and he said, here's what we do, two things. I want you to ask why. You need to ask why. Why are we doing this? Why do I hold the rifle that way? Why do we have to put our rucksack on in that configuration? You got to ask why. That'll help you understand it better. And I was like, all right, I like what this guy's saying. First time anybody asked why once we got back to the drill sergeants. We were all down on the ground pushing. Nobody asked why after that. We learned our lesson. Nobody asked why. We thought, all I need to do is get through the next 9 weeks, or the next day, whenever this drill sergeant leaves and the next one comes in, because it's all in that. It's a battle. It was a daily battle. And that was a little disappointing. And so, from a teacher's point of view, I wanted the drill sergeants to be more concerned with what the soldiers were learning, not what they were supposed to learn. You can say all day long, I did it like this. When I was your age, we did this, or you guys have it easy. You can say that all day long, but what's really important for the Army is that young soldier learning what he's supposed to learn. So that was a little disappointing. In the advanced training, I think it's a little more effective because it's smaller groups and you have more time, and they really are serious about you learning your